The day I was arrested for trimming trees. Normally, what I have to talk about is basically calmly sad. However, this one video is going to be an unusual exception. If I watered down all the drama, there wouldn't be much humor left. It was highly dramatic, but I laughed almost the whole way to the pokey. So today, this true story is excitedly sad. Back in the late 1990s, I was arrested once. Overall, I thought the whole thing was hilarious. My dad, not so much. Before I get into the story, though, I need to make two quick disclaimers. First of all, to the few people who knew and loved my dad's mother and are still alive and kicking, please accept my apologies for any offense taken from my factual statements. We had two very different relatives existing in the same body and going by the same name. Secondly, because some of the people involved are still among the living, I can't or won't name actual names. Not the city, nor the law enforcement involved, nor the criminals I was locked up with. So if I name names, with the exception of my own name, I guarantee that it's not their actual names. Names have been changed to protect the guilty more than for the innocent. So here goes. It happened just before the 4th of July. My dad's adoptive mother, a nonagenarian, which is just a $10 word for saying she was well into her 90s, who insisted on living alone, way out in the sticks. She was living on well water, and if she had a telephone back when party lines were a thing, she probably would still be on one. That's how far out in the country she lived. My parents eventually bought a little place about 10 miles away from my dad's mother. A 10-acre property. You could call it ranch light. Their place was close enough to get there quickly if there was an emergency, but not close enough for his mother to walk over and show up unannounced. After much going back and forth, Dad was finally able to have a telephone installed in her house. She wasn't at all thrilled about it. Dad legally and fully owned the house and property. His adoptive father, who passed away when my dad was only 22 years old, had left everything to my dad with one proviso. His mother could live there for the rest of her life if she wanted. She had no rights to sell or give anything away except the livestock they raised and sold each year to give her money to live on. Dad fully intended to honor that promise. Unfortunately, her state created a set of elder care laws that turned a simple promise into a legal minefield. At the time, a mentally competent senior citizen couldn't be forced into assisted living or nursing home against their wishes. On the surface, that sounds compassionate, until you hear the rest of it. If that same senior citizen insisted on living alone, fell, got hurt, or something worse happened, their adult child could find themselves being investigated for neglect, elder abuse, criminal negligence, or worse. In other words, if Dad made her move, he could get into trouble. If he let her stay, he could get into trouble. That's what we call a nifty-bifty catch-22, or can't win for losing. His mother wasn't some sweet little old lady who simply became cranky with age. She'd been a stubborn, controlling, and manipulative, crotchety old bat for longer than I could remember. Since my dad was suddenly having some vision and minor health problems, he couldn't do the things he did when he was just a tad younger. So he called me and asked if I could come help him with some chores. Of course I can, Daddy. He's my bud. My daughter and I made the road trip to visit both my parents and help them with whatever they needed to get done, with the intention of going back home in time for the 4th of July celebrations with my husband and our sons. When we arrived at my parents' house, my dad and I then went over to his mother's house. Yeah, technically she was my grandmother. She lived alone in a tiny little house so far out in the sticks that GPS probably would have shrugged and said, you're close enough. The property had become badly overgrown. Tree limbs were hanging down so low that the limbs were mixing in with the 4-foot tall brush. The grass had grown super tall and out of hand. The window air conditioner, bless its little heart, was clogged with dirt dauber nests that prevented the fan blade inside the unit itself to be able to spin. Now, if you've never seen a dirt dauber nest, picture this little tube made out of dried mud, basically shaped like a Quonset hut. It's round on top, but not a full round circle. It's flat on the underground or the bottom. They're made out of the dirt dauber's spit into the soil and then transported to wherever the dirt dauber has chosen to build their nest. It's not 100%, but depending on the area's soil, they'll dry rock hard. So hard you'll swear those little suckers fired it in a pottery kiln and then attached it to the most inconvenient location possible, such as inside her air conditioning window unit. Also, you may not know what a dirt dauber looks like. Usually they're a solid dark brown or black, but can have some yellow or red. They're the supermodels of the wasp family. You know it's a dirt dauber if it looks like its rear end is attached to the rest of its body with a tiny little stick. They are the epitome of wasp waist that women strive for back in the 1940s and 50s. They have the ability to sting. They just don't. I mean, to actually get stung by a dirt dauber, you have to be exceptionally irritating before one decides you'd earned it. So don't be afraid of them, but get out of their way. Aside from the non-working window unit, again, due to the dirt dauber's nest, she also had several burnt-out light bulbs in her flush-mounted lights and decorative glass under the bulbs in her living room as well. When Dad and I started to move her dining room table away from the wall a little bit in order for us to get into the window unit to see what's going on, she got very angry. She started yelling in her little old lady voice, curled up her hand into a claw shape, and aimed her pointy nails directly towards my dad's eyes, while trying to holler for us, "Leave everything alone!" Some trivia that has 99.5% of nothing to do with the story here, except when she was a young girl in the early 1900s, she had to get her tonsils removed, and while the doctor was doing the surgery, he slipped and accidentally cut off her uvula. No one has a clue as to how important that little punching bag in the back of the throat really is and how vital it is to everything going on in the mouth. For the rest of her life, she had to be extremely careful when eating or swallowing, or she'd choke something fierce. For one thing, she couldn't have conversations at the dinner table like everybody else. She had to chew every bite completely, or she'd choke. She had to control her swallow, or she'd choke. And with my dad being absolutely hilarious all of his life, I am pretty sure she had several hundreds of choking episodes. With decades of "it's happening again," she ended up with a raspy vocal corded speech, and then add on her silver years, she sounded like Katharine Hepburn. "You're my knight in shining armor." Now, back to the main story. I found a stepladder with some new bulbs to replace the burnt-out bulbs, only to discover the flush-mounted ceiling dish, the light dish, had like 40 to 50 dead hornets lying in it. It was so full that you couldn't even tell if the lights were even on. She then came up to me and tried to pull me off the stepladder while hollering for "leave them alone," that she wanted the dead hornets to stay there. Don't worry, I didn't listen to her. I changed the bulbs and emptied out the hornets, plus washed the glass dish tray thing, whatever, where the dust and the hornets had been gathering, and then put it all back. After fixing her window unit and bringing light back to her home, Dad and I then went outside and walked around her house to see what was needed for me to do. We both happened to see a huge rat, and I mean huge, the size of a cat. It was not a possum, nor a cat, nor a raccoon. I happen to know what all those look like in person. That rat was walking along the side of her house and headed towards a big spot where it could easily go under and get into her house. So my dad asked me if I would cut down the grass near her house and trim back a bunch of low-hanging branches so he could bring in the brush hog and mow down all of the tall grass. Of course I will, Daddy. He's my bud. He tells his mother what we're going to do, or rather what I am going to do. I take her pickup truck and load the gardening tools and tree trimming tools, and my daughter and I start in with a huge tree that has far too many low limbs. Well, she really does not like that at all. But my dad had explained to her why we have to do what we have to do and that he'll be back later. While my daughter and I are out trimming back the first tree, my dad's mother calls the sheriff. He shows up. He doesn't park his patrol car in front of the house. He leaves it out on the 2-lane highway. He comes storming up like Barney Fife with his single bullet loaded. Of course, I notice this and I wonder, why are there other people standing there next to my dad's mother? Well, after Barney speaks with my dad's mother and she points at us with a wicked smile on her face, he then comes storming over to me. I tell my daughter to stay quiet. I'll handle it. He comes over and says that I have 5 minutes to get that truck and those tools out of here or he would arrest me, and he storms off to his patrol car. I pull out my cell phone and call Dad and tell him about the sheriff and those people. He reminds me who the people are. I had never seen them before, but I knew about them. He said that my mom and he will be over there in just a minute. I keep doing what I was doing because it was, after all, my dad's land and he could do whatever he wanted with it, even though his mother was living on it. Now my daughter starts talking all tough and getting excited, and I tell her, stay quiet. I'll take care of it. I'll explain to the sheriff what we're doing, but if she pipes up, it'll make it harder for me. In a minute or two, there is a commotion out on the 2-lane highway. I stop and step over a few feet so I can see what's going on. I see my dad is handcuffed and is being sat in the back of an extremely old patrol car. I didn't put the stuff back in the back of the truck yet. The truck, by the way, belonged to my dad's mother. You know, the genius that called the sheriff. Well, then I see old Stormin' Norman Barney Fife heading my way, dealing with a pair of handcuffs. I could see they were very rusty. I chuckle. And then he's telling me to turn around and that I'm under arrest. I ask what I was being arrested for. He responds, disturbing the peace. I said, but I'm not making any noise. And it's in the middle of the day. I asked for us to just stop for a minute and let's talk. Because he's about to make a huge, huge mistake. He's hollering that he said he'd give me 5 minutes to load up the truck and get out of here. Then my daughter starts ranting and raving and threatening stupid things, and I'm trying to get her to shut up, but with her going on, feeds his anger and gives him justification to go ahead and arrest me instead of calming down and talking. She pipes in with, if you're going to arrest her, then you got to arrest me too. And he said, if you're over 18, stick your hands out and I'll haul you in too. That shocked her, so she ran over to my mother, who I could tell was reading my dad's mother the riot act. I'm still speaking calmly and trying to tell the sheriff that he's making a huge mistake and that we need to talk for a minute. I said, I know you've heard this a million times, mostly from drunk people, I'm sure, but you're about to make an absolutely huge mistake arresting my dad and me. He's whipping off some angry speak and walking me towards my dad's mother and her 2 neighbors, spectators. The 2 spectators mouth off something about me being abusive to my dad's mother, and I give them a look like, you are absolutely insane. But then I say to them, y'all have no room to talk when you haven't even spoken to your own daughter in decades, and she lives just up the hill. They gasped. It shut them up. One of them said, how does she know that? Who is she? I chuckle and shake my head at their stupidity. I mean, they're out there mocking me and yet don't know who I am? Goodness. Now, stopping for a moment about those neighbors, they actually hated my dad's mother. They drove her to the store and to the bank, and before my dad finally forced her to let him install a phone in her house, they'd come get her to talk to whomever called for her. Then she wouldn't pay them for anything, for their gas or phone or whatever, and she had plenty of money. She was just a persnickety old broad who just liked being evil. Now, back to the march to Barney Fife's ancient patrol car. My mom and my daughter stayed talking and chewing out all three of them, while I'm still calmly trying to tell the cop he was making a huge mistake. I gently said, "Sir, not controlling your anger can get you killed one day. Please, let's just stop and resolve all this." He responded with telling me that he gave me plenty of warnings and there was nothing to discuss. I started grinning. I'm getting ornery. Or as we said when I was a kid, ornery. His 1970s era patrol car was all dusty. His trunk lid was open and the trunk was loaded to the hilt with police stuff. It was parked under the shade of a huge pecan tree. He walks me up to the driver's side, I think by mistake. However, I see my dad is in the back seat, sweat dripping down the side of his face, and the windows rolled up and the vehicle is not running. I instantly stop grinning and ask, "Daddy, are you okay?" Barney Fife leaves me to go to his trunk to do something. I've since figured out he was looking for a flathead screwdriver so he could open the plastic panel between the driver's seat and the criminal's back seat. He was then going to turn on the car so my dad would have air. However, at the time, I had no idea what he was doing, and when I asked my dad how he was doing, I went from Dr. Jekyll to Mr. Hyde in a nanosecond. I'm handcuffed and short, and Captain Nutjob was about 2 or 3 inches taller than me. I get up into his face, handcuffed, and start yelling at him, "Listen up, buddy. You can screw around with me all you want, but my dad is off limits. He's a diabetic, sensitive to heat, and he hasn't eaten lunch yet. If anything," and I'm pushing my body into his body and continue hollering, "anything happens to my daddy, I will hunt you down like the dog you are. Do you understand me?" He's looking scared, and then I continued on. "Listen, Skippy, he doesn't even need to be arrested, much less handcuffed. Let him out of there. Now." Yeah, I scared him. I'm still handcuffed, and I scared him. He was visibly shaken and stuttering. I asked my dad if he was handcuffed. He nodded, and I asked if they were too tight. He softly answered, "Yeah, I can't feel my hands." I spun around and yelled at Officer Oopsie to fix my dad's cuffs immediately. He came running over to my dad's door and helped my dad out of the patrol car. His hands were shaking so hard, he had a bear of a time trying to unlock my dad's handcuffs. I again said to him, "There is zero need to cuff my dad, nor to arrest him. His vision is so poor right now that he can't see more than a foot in front of him. Get those suckers off of him, now." He said, I can't do that, ma'am." I rolled my eyes and then said out loud, "Ugh, what a maroon." He fixes the cuffs and puts my dad back in the patrol car, but this time leaves the door open. It's the middle of the day in early July, so it's hotter than a firecracker. Pardon the pun. Then Deputy Doofus walks me to the other side of the car and has me get in, and he keeps the door open too. He goes back to the trunk and is fiddling around in there some more, and I softly asked if Dad was okay. His lips moved into an awkward shape and said, "Meh, I'll be okay," in an effort to downplay how he was really feeling. He was always like that, always downplaying if he was in any pain or not feeling well. My dad was definitely not a whiny baby, like most men when their temperature rises from the normal 98.6 to 99 degrees. Then before I could challenge my dad any further, Constable Clueless tried to shut the trunk lid, but it wouldn't catch. He tried again and again and again and again, and every time he slammed the lid down, dust would shoot out the back window panel or ledge and poof, all over me and my dad. Clueless had no idea what he was doing to us. It was so bad and funny. And then I got really ornery and started yelling, "Help, Mama! He's killing us! He's killing us!" The Popo freaks. My mom freaks. She starts to run toward us. I instantly stop and start apologizing to my mom and telling her I was just kidding, just kidding. And the reason was, my mom's entire neck turned bright, splotchy red, which reminded me that she has high blood pressure. I did not want to cause her a heart attack or even kill her by my joking around. However, I thoroughly enjoyed freaking out Barney Boy. My mom exhales and asks what's going on, and I told her every time he slams the trunk lid, he coats Dad and me with tons of dust. Just then, he tries to slam the trunk lid again. And I went, "Look!" And I'm laughing. She relaxes and walks up closer to see that we are covered in dust. I look over at the dashboard of this ancient paddy wagon and see there is nearly 400,000 miles on this piece of stuff. Goodness gracious. I turned to Dad and said, "I'm sorry, Dad. Did I make it worse for us?" He again did his lip-skewing thing and said, "Nah." I told him about the mileage and that it explained the dust bath we were both getting. Finally, he was successful in slamming the trunk shut once and for all. Then he comes back up to his driver's seat, reaches in, starts up the patrol car, and then proceeds to roll down our windows and shut our doors. Deputy Dimwit comes back around, gets in to drive us to our fated imprisonment. He peels out, and the tires are spinning dirt everywhere, and he flips a U-turn, as in a U-turn, onto the 2-lane highway. He floors it. He sees the tow truck driver that he called for. He flagged him down and asked him to borrow a screwdriver so he could open the plastic panel between us. He bangs super hard on the plexiglass and finally able to get it open. He hands back the screwdriver and looks at my dad and me before he gets back in to drive away. His look was of total embarrassment. I'm totally cracking up now, or still. The tow truck continues driving toward our crime scene to tow off my dad's mother's truck. I was told later that she just stood there and watched him do it, too. My dad made her pay the impound fee. Then she was all butthurt over getting it towed. She was the reason for the whole debacle in the first place. I mean, think about it. She called the police and watched as her son and granddaughter were arrested and hauled off to the slammer, all because she didn't want the trees trimmed, the Hornet cemetery emptied, the burnt-out light bulb to be changed out, and because we moved her dining room table a foot away from the wall to fix her window unit and then put the table back in place. Whew, I tell you, it's a real head shaker. Since the window in the patrol car was now open, I knew he could hear me. I started singing. Every jail song I could think of, I sang. One after another. Then moved to Negro spirituals like, "Nobody knows the trouble I've seen," and "Swing low, sweet chariot." He's shooting me looks like it's ticking him off, so I sing louder. He floors it even more. I look at the speedometer and say, "Hey, Daddy, we must be some real hardened criminals. He's driving 125 miles per hour. Then I ask Deputy Doolittle, "Can you turn on the sirens too, please?" He sees in the rearview mirror that I'm totally laughing and totally making fun of him. He quietly answers, "No, I can't." I jokingly answered, "You can't drive 125 miles an hour either, but you are. Come on, let's have a little fun. Help warn people that you're an angry cop rocket on the highway. At the rate we're going, we're just a blur. But still, show everybody you've nabbed someone who had the audacity to help improve the landscape by trimming some trees in this state." He acted like he was just ignoring me. I went back to singing. He's majorly ticked. I'm grinning like the evil Grinch, and then I look at my dad. His language then was just with his eyebrows. No one else knew what my dad was saying except me. And he was not scolding me. We finally get to the police station. It was a cheesy looking old hag of a place. The most rotten of ghettos would even look down at this place. We're still handcuffed and escorted into the little building. I had never seen the place before. By the looks of it, from where we were, you'd almost think it was an old gas station and we were entering through its restroom doors. Now, just inside the door, he stops us and takes the handcuffs off of my dad and then takes mine off. I have a wide band of rust around both wrists. I start chuckling and said, "My word, that's really sad. This station has vintage patrol cars and handcuffs from the Civil War, all rusty and everything." Deputy Fife is really shaken by my teasing. I don't care. I think it's funny. Now, picture this. To our left is a tall counter with a young guy standing behind it and a computer monitor that looks like it's been solely used in a gas station garage. It's filthy. On the counter is a huge, and I mean ginormous huge book, easily 3 feet long by 4 feet wide, lined like school notebook paper, handwritten titles over each column and handwritten information going down the page. Now, I'll come back to this Bullwinkle Rocky's Fractured Fairy Tale book in a moment. To our right is a dimly lit office with several computer monitors and keyboards all sitting on a long table that's connected to the wall. Barney, old boy, goes in there and sits down. He looks majorly lost and confused. The young guy behind the tall counter, a teenager, asks my dad for his information and starts the procedure for booking my dad. I turn around and see the Popo is still out of his league. He yells a question to the kid that's getting info from my dad, and it's a computer question. I walked over there and very calmly said, "Would you like some help? I can type 100 words a minute." He stammers. I can see he's blushing and finally says, "No, thanks. I just need to get to the desktop." I then said, "Oh, that's easy. See that thing on the table with the cable to your computer? That's called a mouse. Take hold of that mouse and move it. It will make that blinky thing on your screen, called a cursor, among other things, created to make you curse. Move that cursor and click on that line right there." He did, and there was another document underneath. I looked at the tray at the bottom of the screen and saw there was like 15 tabs open. I told him how to get rid of all those tabs, and he found the icon he needed to click to write out his arrest report. Now, to brag on myself just a little, the whole time I was in there, I spoke calmly like a very patient teacher. Nothing snarky. I told him again that I would be happy to help him fill out the police report since I type, 100 words a minute. He stuttered a slight movement like he was going to accept my offer when I think he realized what he was about to do and jerked the mouse over and humbly said, no, thank you." "No problem. If you change your mind, I'll be right over there with my dad." And I walked out of the room. When I walked back out, Dad had just finished whatever they were doing. He pointed my dad to the guy who had a Polaroid camera to take a pic of my dad. It didn't qualify as a mugshot because there were no numbers behind my dad to show his height, nor did he hold a plate in front of him telling him inmate number or date or name. I'm watching all this and internally laughing at all the craziness of this. It's like out of a Monty Python movie. Then the jailer walked over to my dad and handed him an orange jumpsuit and sandals, told him to go into the public restroom and change in there. Oh boy. The kid then asked for my ID and I handed it to him. Then I start reading this super huge book. I asked the kid, "What's this huge book for?" He blushed. "Why?" My best guess is that he too knew this whole thing was ridiculous. He answered, "This is where we list people arrested." And I looked from the book to the computer and pointed to his monitor and said, "Huh?" He shook his head and said, "Well, we're trying to update and transition, but haven't quite made it yet." I chuckled and say, "Well, okay. Wait, so this is where you book the people, as in book 'em Dano booking?" He nods his head again and blushes. I'm astonished and impressed. "No way! That is too cool. So my name is going to be written in there too?" He acknowledged it would. I start reading down the list. The names, the crimes, the dates, and the times of their arrest. Then, suddenly, I see my husband's name. Now, it's not a common name like John Smith, but it's a relatively common name. I read that this guy with my husband's name was arrested for intoxication, but the date written there was the next day's date, not today or yesterday. So I asked the kid, "What? You mean to tell me that y'all have your own Otis the town drunk here? Does he just waltz in, plops into his cell cot, and sleeps it off like in the Andy Griffith Show?" The kid grins and again blushes. He said, "No." I looked at him with a really puzzled look and asked, "Then he makes reservations to be arrested? How do you know he's going to be intoxicated and arrested tomorrow night?" The kid steps up on his tiptoes, leans in, and reads the date and answered, "Oh, that's just a mistake." Then, with all dead seriousness on my face and attitude as if I were bipolar, which I'm not, and the sound of my voice, I quietly responded, "Careful. Criminals walk on mistakes." The kid froze and had a deer in the headlight look to him and said, "Well, I don't know." I still had my billfold and cell phone with me, and it was just then that my husband called. He was frantic. I knew it was because our daughter called him all freaked out, Chicken Little style. "The sky is falling, the sky is falling." I laughed and said, "Hey, honey, aren't you at home with the boys?" He affirmed that he was and asked why. I said, I'm working at trying not to laugh until I get to it, but still keeping my sense of humor in my voice, I asked, "Well, they have this book here in the police station, like Bookum Dano book. It's huge, and your name is in it. It says here you're going to be arrested tomorrow evening for public intoxication. I know you don't drink because of your family's history of alcoholism, so is there something you want to tell me?" He relaxed then. He could tell I wasn't all in a tizzy about being arrested. Then the kid asked what I was arrested for, the charge. I said, and pointing to the computer room, he said I was arrested for disturbing the peace. The kid looked confused and said, "No." He looked at the wall that apparently had a cheat sheet for the fines or fees for various arrests. We both saw that it was $50. I opened my billfold and I just happened to have, which was actually unusual, $100. I said, "Oh, cool. I have just enough to spring both me and my dad." The kid is majorly confused, probably because he knows that no one is arrested on a disturbing the peace charge unless it's late at night and they've been warned, maybe even warned a few times. So he calls out to Deputy Gooberhead in the room behind me, still pecking away at the keyboard, and asks him what the charges are. The popo gets up and walks towards me and then paces back and forth a couple of times. And I said, "Disturbing the peace. That's what you told me you were going to arrest me for if I didn't pack up that equipment into the truck and leave." He stopped and his eyes freaked. He ran a hand through his hair and said, No, disobeying a lawful order." And then he ran out the door. I'm standing there, stunned. The kid is standing there stunned, too. I said, "No, he did not give me any lawful order. He said disturbing the peace. He told me to get the gardening equipment in that truck and leave, which is an unlawful order, since that truck was not mine, and to drive off in it. He'd have been telling me to steal the truck." We both look at the wall and discover that disobeying a lawful order has a $100 fine each, and I did not have $200 on me. I put the cell phone back to my ear and said, "Well, honey, I'm going to the pokey with Dad. I'll see you whenever we've served our hard time. I love you. Keep track of the boy's height and take regular pictures for me." My husband, knowing me so well, didn't freak, but did ask if I really had any idea how long I was going to be in jail. I told him I didn't know, but it was all going to be okay, because God visits jails too, and then repeated that I loved him and goodbye. The kid had a really hard time then. Like he knew what he was being told to do was not right. But he was just a lowly guy on the totem pole. Then the jailer walked over to me and handed me an orange jumper and sandals. Told me to go to the ladies' restroom and change into the jumper, but I could leave my clothes on underneath. I gave him a weird look, like that was a nutty thing to say. However, I went in, pulled on the jumper, and noticed a bunch of very curly black hairs interlocked into the Velcro of the jumpsuit. I looked at it and prayed, "Oh, Lord, please let this have been worn by a black man, and it's just his chest hairs." Oh, my stars forevermore. When I came out, the jailer directed me over to the cameraman with the Polaroid camera. I asked where my numbers were. I mean, if I was going to the pen over trimming some trees, the least they could do is give me a full lockup service. They all laughed and said, "No, we're not that far advanced into the future yet. Maybe one day." I told them that if they weren't going to give me a number, then I was going to create my own. I held up my first, or pointer finger, on one hand and my middle finger on the other hand and said, "Cheese." The cameraman pushed the button on the Polaroid and just shook his head and fought to keep from laughing. He just pointed to the jailer as his way of saying, "Go see that guy now." The jailer was sitting on a bar stool. He handed me a styrofoam cup. I looked at it and my head shot up, shock on my face, and asked, "You mean now I have to do a pee test over trimming trees?" He said, "No, that's for coffee in the morning." Still shocked, I said, "No. Well, for one thing, I don't drink coffee, and two, I won't be here in the morning. But hey now, where's my tin cup so I can run it back and forth over the bars and holler out, 'I've been railroaded'?" He chuckles and told me that there's no bars in the particular cell he's putting me in. He then proceeds to tell me there were 2 women's cells. In the first cell, there was a woman who was serving out her tickets over each weekend. He tells me that she's crazy and not sure how harmless. So he's going to put me in the other women's cell with 2 women that were okay. He also bragged that the cell I was going to be in was the same cell that an old famous outlaw had once been jailed in back in the 1800s. Well, that explains the outside of the building being run down. I wasn't disrespectful outwardly, but in my mind, I had a few scathing words for that night at the museum tour guide trivia. Really? Ugh. While I was getting my 5 seconds of photography fame, they took my dad back to the men's cell. When my dad was all secured in his cell, then they opened the door to the cells for me. Lord have mercy. The door opens, and I'm facing the set of the Andy Griffith Show. The whole wall facing the door was one line of jail cells, all connected, 3 or 4 cells. Oh yeah, and none of them except my dad were wearing any kind of a jumpsuit, much less orange. A couple of them looked like extras from Deliverance. 2 of them had overalls with no shirt on and only one strap hook closed. I'm stunned. First, I get arrested by Barney Fife and his single bullet. Otis has a reservation in the Fractured Fairy Tales Bookum Dano book. A woman to my right is reaching out her arm out of the slot in the solid door of her jail cell, acting all like crazy, which immediately told me it was an act so that she wouldn't be selling up with someone who really was dangerous. I'm slowly walking into this area, and to my left was the solid cell door where I was going to spend my 5-star Howard Johnson's day. The door to my cell is opened, and a woman is sitting on the floor in the middle of the doorway. The guys ahead of me were all lined up and yelling things like, "Hi, baby, what's your name?" and asking if I'm married, what's my address, and would I go out on a date with them when I got out. The woman on the floor in the doorway to my abode didn't move yet. She said, "Hi, baby, what's your name?" I said, "JC." She hollered my name to them. The instant it came out of my mouth, I thought, "What are you doing? You should have made up a name." Except for Otis, I have no idea what these people are in for. They asked for my last name and asked where I lived, and then she asked for my last name and where I was from. I'm puzzled because I can hear them. So why was she repeating everything they were saying? By the way, I was about 5 feet closer to them than she was. I looked over at them and said, "What are you going to do, write me a letter?" Then they asked what my last name was. She, of course, repeated it, as if I didn't hear them myself, I guess. And then I snapped, "Penny, look, I'm married with 5 kids. Shut up and leave me alone." The woman on the floor yelled out to them, all tough like, "Her last name is Penny. She's married with kids. Shut up and leave her alone." And one guy hollered out, "Hey, JC Penny, want to go out sometime?" And I have to be honest, I had to work at not laughing at that one. That was pretty good. I shook my head and walked towards the woman on the floor, still blocking the doorway to the cell room. The jailer tells her to move. I mentally add the phrase I would say to toddlers, "You're not a cartoon. I can't walk through you." She moves out of the doorway. Maybe she read my mind. I look over to my right now and scan the crowd for my dad. He's easy to spot since he's the only one in a hunter or safety orange jumpsuit. He's not looking too good. I say a prayer for him to be safe through all this foolishness. My dad was an awesome guy. He made friends wherever he went, super bright, funny, and a JD in law. I wasn't worried about his safety. I was concerned about his blood sugar. So I prayed while walking into my cell. Apparently, the jailer had no idea what the cells even looked like because there were bars in 3 places in that particular women's cell. 2 of the places had been windows that were replaced by cinder block, but the bars and the windowsills were still there. Then high up on the far wall was a row of transom windows with bars all the way across. A couple of the transoms were open as far as the bars would allow them to open, and all I had was a styrofoam cup, dagnabbit. I really had been railroaded. When I walked in, I see on my left a massively huge woman, who was not, by the way, wearing a jumper, but instead black spandex shorts that were stretched beyond their maximum capacity and an ill-fitting mustard-colored top that had seen better days ages ago. You could say it was even past using at a car wash. She didn't say anything. She just looked miserable. She was kind of rocking back and forth a little bit. Her face or forehead was a little sweaty looking. She nodded her head to acknowledge my hello. She was sitting on a concrete bench, for want of a better term. Maybe call it a concrete berm. It was nearly as wide as a cot, and it extended all the way down to the far wall with the transom windows. To my right was a shower and a restroom, and a hole in the wall missing bathroom tiles showing into the men's shower. Lovely. On the wall under the transom windows was a 3-level bookcase with several books, maybe 50 to 100, sparsely filling the shelves. To my right, along the same wall as the entrance to the showers and toilets, was a queen-size air mattress with sheets and pillows and a small blanket. There were pictures taped up on the wall and a mini headboard for the air mattress, holding various little knickknacks. The woman who had been in the doorway, she moved over onto the air mattress and sat cross-legged or Indian style. Before I passed the first non-barred yet barred window, there was a window ledge still in place. On it sat a slew of styrofoam cups. Imagine that. They had crayons, decks of cards, and some other things I couldn't quite tell what it was. I asked, and no one in particular, "Are they open for anyone, or do I have to promise something first?" They both laughed. The air mattress lady said that everything on that shelf was available to anyone and told me to take whatever I wanted. I thanked her and chose a styrofoam cup with a deck of cards in it. Then I went to the far corner under the transom windows next to the wall-length bookcase, sat down on that big old concrete wall, berm, bed thingy, I don't know, and just started to count the cards to make sure all 52 were in the deck. Amazing. No one had stolen any of the cards out of the deck. Imagine that. Someone was honest and didn't steal anything. Anyway, the air mattress lady asked me what I was in for. Wait, I've got to give that air mattress woman a name. So let's call her Queenie, as in Queen Bee with a queen-sized air mattress. She was a hoot and a half, and I don't mean intentionally funny. She was an insane goofball. I would find out later she was beyond an insane goofball. I grinned at her question of what I was in for, because that sounded just like a line straight out of those jail movies. I said, for trimming trees on my daddy's land. She asked who arrested me. I told her, and she responded, oh yeah, he's a hothead. I thought, no fooling. She started giving me the rundown of the place. I guess introductions on how to play well with others and that we'd get along just fine. She was sure I was going to be there until after the 4th of July holidays. I quietly said a prayer as I played one-handed solitaire. Lord, I'm not closing my eyes around that woman. You'd better not make me stay here, even overnight. Please? In Jesus' name? Amen? Pretty please? I wasn't scared. A tiny fraction of fear did pop up when I thought I might spend the night there, but I instantly tamped that stupid thought down. I knew my God would help me the whole time I was in there, and I'd be out within a few hours. So Queenie continued asking me questions, and then I asked, may I ask what y'all are in for, or is that a jailhouse no-no? They laughed. The rocking, massive woman in the corner told me she was being extradited out of the state the next day. I nodded, and I wasn't sure if I should ask her to expound on that or not. Turns out her slow answering was due to the problem that she had the trots. She was sweating profusely, and in the few hours I was there, she trotted to the restroom 4 times. Let me tell you, you have not lived until you witness a several hundred-pound person running to the restroom and then hear them forcefully ejecting liquids and solids from their nether region. Ooh. She then told me that she had been arrested for wrongful use of a credit card. I was shocked that they were extraditing her for a credit card. I verified. Extradition over a credit card? She looked down and said, nah, 32 of them. Now my thought was, 32? But that takes effort. How are you so fat? Thankfully, I was not on sodium pentothal, and those thoughts just stayed in my head and never blurted out of my mouth. She complimented the police that arrested her. They let her bring in the fish she had just caught and allowed her to find someone to take her dog while she was away. They didn't even handcuff her. Of course. And I thought, they probably didn't have enough handcuffs to daisy chain them behind you. I looked at my own rusty wrists and showed them to her and said, well, that was definitely a good thing. Queenie then needed her time back in the spotlight again, so she said that I probably already knew all about her. She claimed since it was all over the news. I apologized and said, well, I'm sorry. Actually, I don't live in this state. Plus, I don't get to watch TV very much with kids and full-time work. Fortunately, she didn't get offended and do a little Lady Katie go kaboom on me. She answered, it's okay. They don't have anything on me anyway. I'm getting out soon. I asked how long she had been in there for, and she said, August. My jaw drops open, and I asked, of last year? She dusted off her knee and said, yeah, but they don't got anything on me. Yeah. I found out later that was not going to be happening for another 40 years, at least. She proceeded to tell me that the air mattress wasn't hers. It belonged to her lover that was serving out her jail time on the weekends. That woman finished up and let Queenie have the air mattress, until she finishes up her time. She left it for Queenie to use until her day in court happened. Queenie proceeded to tell me, hint maybe, that she was bisexual and she and her boyfriend were in jail awaiting trial and their baby was staying with her mother. She was one of 14 kids herself, no idea her age exactly. And then while she was jabbering away, she whips out a joint. Here in the joint. She lit it up. How? I have no idea. And then she stood on the 3-level bookcase and blew the pot smoke out the transom windows. Then she looks down and told me not to tell anyone. I responded with, who would I tell? She looked relieved and said, yeah, okay, thanks. I'm mentally praising the Lord that I have a deck of cards to distract me from showing my thoughts. I'd make a horrible poker player because a poker face I do not have. She proceeded to tell me more things. Her speech was like a jackrabbit, in fits and starts and stalls, then jabbering all way at 90 to nothing. She started to give me the lowdown on the schedule of the jail, breakfast, lunch, dinner, shower, lights out, and I'm mentally saying to the Lord, thank you for getting me out of here before I have to consume anything. Then she decides she wants to write some of the men in the neighboring cells. She brought out from her headboard her, as she called it, mail shuttle, M-A-I-L. It was a single low-cut sock with a cotton pom-pom on the back of it, with the cardboard paper still in the sock. It was to give distance when throwing it. Around it was wrapped about 20 foot of string that was tied to the little cotton ball, to act kind of like fly fishing. She wrote her love letter and tucked it inside the sock, went over to the slot in the door, wrapped the end of it yarn around her finger, and then flung the whole thing towards the men's cells. They'd catch it, somehow, and write a love letter back to her. I wondered if they wrote things like George Strait's song, check yes or no. Well, she showed me. And almost yes. Whoever caught the shuttle sock got to write her back. They told her they wanted her really bad and couldn't wait until they were out and could be with her. She wrote dirty garbage back. I mentally rolled my eyes and reminded myself that I was in the tank, not a think tank. After a little while longer, maybe an hour or two, our cell door opened and they called my name. I whooped, I've been sprung! And they both laughed. I wished them both good luck in their legal endeavors and walked out. The row of male jailbirds all whooped and hollered again at me and said, goodbye, J.C. Penney. I couldn't help myself. I kind of turned toward them and did that pin-up girl pose and blew them a kiss, then walked out to their whooping and hollering and thanks. I told the kid, the Polaroid cameraman, and the jailer that it was fun meeting them, and I'm still all smiles, chomping at the bit to tell everyone about my time in the Hooskow. However, my dad was not smiling. Now, that was just part of the story. My part. While I was serving time in my above-ground oubliette, which is just French for dungeon, my dad was with all those Larry, Daryl, and Daryl guys. He said when he walked in, they asked, what are you in for, tax evasion? Even in an orange jumpsuit, my dad exuded class and elegance, and even at the age of 60, he was 6'1" and had been a competition bodybuilder. He had the same measurements as Arnold Schwarzenegger, only he was an inch shorter and a whole heck of a lot better looking. Sorry, Arnold. Dims the facts, Jack. He put himself through college doing that and powerlifting competitions to support my mom, brother, and me. He had also been a preacher and worked at various sales jobs until he finally graduated the first time. He graduated with a degree, several degrees, in theology, philosophy, and in accounting. And he passed the CPA exam on his first try. Then he worked as a CPA as well as taught accounting at night while working on getting his JD in law. He passed the bar on his first try as well. I was 11 years old when he graduated law school. He said in his cell there was a man sitting on a bench up against the cinder block wall. Never moved, never said a word, never smiled, and never uncrossed his arms. Someone had drawn an arrow pointing at him with a sign that said, "Does not play well with others." He said there was also an old white-haired man who looked kind of frail. He was nice. Then there was a huge black man, far bigger than my dad, he said. Now, personally, I don't recall seeing a black man in a cell, much less a huge one. I mean, someone termed huge by my dad's standards would kind of stand out, don't you think? Anyway, he said a black man kept pacing back and forth diagonally across the cell, like he was there to protect my dad and the frail old man. He didn't say much at all, just paced back and forth the whole time. The old frail guy asked my dad, "Is that your daughter in there? Is she the one making them laugh?" He affirmed I was making them laugh. The frail guy spent his time giving my dad the lowdown of what all I was serving time with. He didn't know about the Trotz lady, but he knew Queenie. He told my dad that she was mighty dangerous and basically a bisexual bipolar murderess. Also enlightening Dad that she was there on trial for beating to death 2 senior citizens with a shovel. She had been in that cell since August of the previous year. Her boyfriend or baby daddy had finally finished his trial and awaiting sentencing. They told him that she was the one who knocked a hole through the showers so that she could watch the guys and, pleasure them too. My dad wasn't scared for me. He was just massively ticked off that we were both wrongfully arrested and that they placed me in the same cell as a murderess. Now, while Dad and I were in our respective coolers, my mom was making phone calls right and left. She called the pastor of their church. She called their friend, who was also their attorney, but couldn't get hold of him. It turns out that while my mom was calling around for their attorney friend, he had been in a major car accident and nearly died. Their banker friend asked my mom what the matter was and could he help. She told him about us getting arrested but had no idea where we were taken. He told her to stay where she was and he was going to come get her and take care of the issue, that it would not be a problem. He drove my mom and daughter to the police station where we were jailed. They walked in the same door my dad and I had been brought into. The hothead who arrested us just about messed his drawers when he saw the banker. The banker casually said, "Well, hello. I understand you're holding a couple of friends of mine. Where do I go to get them out?" Well, Sheriff Shortfuse started stammering, my mom told us later. Then he pointed over to the counter, the one with the big, huge Fractured Fairy Tales Book'em Dano book. He found out what it would take to spring us and asked if he could write a check. The kid stuttered and stammered. Their policy was no checks. But a freaking bank president was asking if he could write a check? What to do? The kid asked the hothead, and the hothead stuttered and paced back and forth and then said, "No, I'm sorry, we can't take checks." My parents' friend gently responded with, "All right, we'll be right back." He drove my mom and my daughter to his bank. He went in the back door, 'cause he could. He did a legitimate withdrawal, enough to cover both my dad and me, and was going to straighten everything out with my dad the next business day. They drove back, came back in, and paid the fine. Big ol' whopping $200. Now, I never asked my mom about all this. My mom had always been squirreling away money for you never know when times. She squirreled away several $1,000s one time in order to surprise my dad with a special edition Rolex watch. Mrs. Secret Moneybags didn't have $200 on her? Geez, I had $100. I have thought about it a lot, and I figured she was so upset at the whole thing that she wasn't thinking at all. She was busy praying and looking to resolve everything. She didn't even know where we had been taken. No one could really answer her, so I can understand the last thing on her mind was, where did she squirrel away some bail money? Now that their pastor had arrived, their banker friend went home to his family's 4th of July celebration. The pastor took us all to get some ice cream. I'm yammering away at all that went on, and my dad, who is not a chatty Cathy to begin with, but is known for dropping in a joke bomb here and there, always appropriate subject and timing. He wasn't saying anything. He also wasn't smiling. Then I asked about having to come back for court and found out that I wouldn't have to worry about that. My dad told me he was going to take care of it all. He was livid. When he, and I'm the same way, gets very angry, he gets very quiet and talks softly. I think he was preparing to sue the daylights out of the guy who arrested us. Even though my dad was an attorney, he wasn't a sue-happy kind of guy for himself. For his clients, yeah, he was super fierce. For him to pursue something like this meant he was madder than old wet hen, and it was serious. Now, the first business day after our arrest, the heinous duo, Dad consulted with his attorney friend, then with his brother, the banker, and also the judge, and they met with the arresting officer. Oh my goodness, they read him the riot act. They told him that he royally messed up. They told him that my dad could sue and end up owning the whole county. Then told him he had two choices. A, be fired, or B, go active duty. He chose to re-up and disappear for a year or so. The money was refunded to the banker brother, a huge apology was issued to my dad, and our records were wiped clean. Nothing showing up, even in the newspaper, about our arrest. So apparently, they completely purged that incident. Our arresting mugshot Polaroids were destroyed, though. Anyway, all traces were eliminated in exchange for my dad not filing suit against them. They told the cop that what he did jeopardized the entire area and everyone's jobs. He was told that it was only by the grace of God that my dad didn't sue the pants off of him and the county. I saw Deputy Dog years later. He didn't remember me. I shook his hand and reminded him that I was the one he arrested for trimming trees. He gasped and said, nice seeing you again, and ran off. I mean, Trot ran off. There's something I'd like to point out here. My dad spent years, even decades, carrying around an invisible backpack, you could say, full of stress. Most of that his mother put on him, and some of that he put on himself. Such as, what if she falls? What if she gets hurt? What if somebody tries to blame me? Were all the latest weights of stress. Every phone call from his mother's house tossed another brick into that backpack of stress. By the time this story happened, it was already pretty heavy. Hopefully that should help explain a little bit as to why I thought the whole ordeal was hilarious, and Dad didn't. My dad and I had two very different views on the whole debacle. He was thinking about the law, getting the property cleaned up, wishing he could put her in a nursing home or assisted living, but can't because she sabotaged every assisted living and nursing home they visited. Wishing he didn't have to put up with her constant covert and overt hateful games. Then dealing with Sheriff Shortfuse on a power trip, and then once we were both in jail cells, he's being told about the evil psycho nutcase I was pinned up with, and there wasn't a thing he could do to protect me other than pray for me. He's having health issues and in pain, and yet has to tramp around everywhere to get that bogus arrest seen to, and potentially how long will all this garbage take to handle? He couldn't or wouldn't see the humor in any of it. Yet there were several things he could have chosen to think on. The same things that I was thinking on, and it was making me laugh. The Bible says in Philippians chapter 4, verse 8, whatever is true, honorable, right, pure, lovely, admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, then think on these things. The Bible also says in James chapter 1, verse 2, to count it all joy when you fall into temptations or trials. And in Genesis, the scripture assures us that whatever was intended for evil, God can use it and turn it into good for a greater purpose. Like this YouTube video. Listen, life can throw you a slew of curveballs. And I would have to say that getting arrested would definitely qualify as a doozy of a curveball. You can choose to get angry at it and let it eat you alive. Be all doused in major negative thoughts and lies, like it's the color of your skin, it's where you're from, it's your gender, it's your lack of a valuable investment portfolio. Or you can find the humor or try to imagine how God is in all of it as you're going through all of it. I didn't have a problem because I kept my faith and trusted my God. He kept me peaceful even when I was in that psychotic's lion's den. You have to control your thoughts and emotions. Contrary to what some people claim, you are not an animal. You can work at and succeed at controlling your actions and emotions. It's not easy at first, but keep working on it. I used to tell my son when he would get enraged, you control your temper. If you won't control it, you won't control anything. He was a toddler, and for years had no idea what that meant exactly. However, he did get it, that I wasn't going to put up with him not controlling himself. As I told the police officer several times, he needed to calm down and let's talk. Because he wouldn't control himself, he has a lifetime of thinking back to that day and be embarrassed for it for the rest of his life. You can't unsay what you said. You can't undo what you did. There is no rewind and erase or delete and do-over. There is no take two. So, make yourself to stop and think about a situation. Yes, while you're in the midst of the storm, you choose your emotions. You choose how you're going to act. Are you going to have to apologize for saying something you didn't really mean? Are you going to be able to live with what you did in the heat of the moment? Are you going to choose to be angry and miserable for the rest of your life? Or are you going to choose to take the classy route to forgive? Look for the positive things and live with gratefulness and praise. It's really up to you. Ignore the noise and listen to the peace. Thank you. Subscribe if you enjoy true stories with timeless lessons and thoughtful conversations. I'd love to have you back. I'll see you next time. It's all calmly said.